I can actually remember having this conversation with somebody once about a situation that I was in with my boss at the time, where we were in this meeting and it was kind of getting frustrating. And after the meeting, somebody from the partner community who said to me, "This person that you're communicating with is a very linear thinker. They need to go from step one, two, three, four. That's their learning process. You tend to be a step one, step six, step five, step two, step 10. It's just a style thing. And that's okay. But just remember that the other person needs to come on the journey with you."
We talk a lot about careers as if they're linear. Do good work, get noticed, move on up. But anyone who spent real time in an organization knows that's not how it actually plays out. Careers are shaped by patterns, by visibility, by language, and by those who advocate for you. In today's conversation, I wanted to slow down and observe those patterns with two women who live them firsthand. Not to extract advice or clear-cut lessons, but to learn from how they navigated complexity, built credibility, and continued to climb in environments that weren't always designed with them in mind. In this episode, I speak with Leslie Belicka, North American Channel Sales Manager at HPE, who's grown her career with the company over the last 27 years. And Emily Martin, a mentor of mine and the Executive Vice President of Hybrid Platforms here at Pellera. And while this episode centers on the influential voices of women in tech, when listening, let the insights here go far beyond that. Because when we ensure everyone at the table is heard, it unquestionably benefits us all. I'm really excited today to be here with two incredible guests. So I've only been in the tech world for about 10 or so years, and I'm really curious. Emily, what are some of the unwritten rules that you wish somebody had stuck in your pocket when you walked in the door?
Jonathan, thanks for that intro. I am really pleased to be on the podcast. When I started out, nothing was really how I thought it would be. I think one of the unwritten rules that I wish somebody had stuck in my pocket or just said to me was, there's actually no way for you to learn it other than to do it. You have to experience these things firsthand to be able to understand how business works, how technology really works, to understand how people really make decisions when it comes to making decisions for their business. And there's really no shortcut to it. There's no books you can read. There's no podcast that you can listen to that's really going to give you the answers. You have to go through the experiences. And then when you read the books and you listen to the podcasts, it gives you the opportunity to reflect on your experience. But the experience is the essential factor. You got to try things.
It's definitely critical. There's what you know, there's what you think you know, and then what actually happens. I'm curious, Leslie, have you ever experienced imposter syndrome?
I think I'm in it every day of my life, to be honest. Like there's some days where I'm like, what is going on? What am I doing? And then there's other days that I'm like, I got this. So I think imposter syndrome is, I think everybody would tell you they have a little bit of that. I honestly think it's because the world's changing so much, the industry's changing, that the second you think you have a grasp on a solution or a product or a person or a company, a vendor, something changes. And so it's almost impossible to feel like you are at the peak of understanding what is happening in the industry. And I think that leads to a bit of the imposter syndrome. But ask questions to the people around. Have you heard of this? Have you heard of that? How are we doing here? And then everybody's doing it together. And it's not just a single imposter syndrome. We all have it. We're all trying to make our way and end up where it's successful for everybody.
I would agree with that. I think imposter syndrome is something that all of us share. I think it's the one thing that is so relatable. Everyone goes through that sense of, are they really going to let me do this? I'm just a goofball kid. Because the thing is, at the end of the day, all of us still has that goofball kid inside of us. And if you know how to harness it, it can actually be the thing that humanizes you to your peers, to your customer. It's just one of those things that you just got to embrace and recognize that the person that you're sitting across from is probably feeling that same level of uncertainty as well. And it's what makes us human.
Can you talk more about doing good work? Is that just enough?
I think it's the most essential thing to do the great work, and great is better than good. But in order to do it, you need to make sure that it's aligned with what people are trying to achieve. You need to be willing to put on hold your assumption about what somebody else needs and really dig in and get to understand the problem that you're dealing with in order for the work to end up being good or to hit the mark that you're trying to hit. So if you're thinking about it in the context of navigating career, it's a really important and vital thing to sit down with your colleagues and sit down with your boss and understand, what does good look like to them? What are they looking to achieve?
Totally agree, Emily. And I do think the good versus the great. If I look back on my career, the goodness of what each role was what maybe was expected of me. And the greatness was when I took it a step further or was uncomfortable with what I was doing or being challenged in a way that, well, that's not my role. That is when I look back and view the great things that I felt like I did or what our company did was really being in an uncomfortable place. You never report back on the day to day things that are your role. And the greatness comes when you step out of that.
I think that's a great point. Once you've started to do these things over and over again, you start to be able to anticipate what the next step on top of it could be so that you can be hitting the mark and then saying, oh, and here's that little bit more.
What you said, Emily, it's about hitting the mark that the organization and your peers need you to hit, not the mark that you want to hit. Right? You could do something absolutely phenomenal, amazing, but if it's in the wrong direction, it can hurt the organization and hurt yourself. It's about having that alignment, but to get there, it's about listening, it's about empathizing, it's about understanding, which is not something I learned in grad school.
But it is one of the things that's nice about having a good mix of people on your team, and in particular, having some women on the team, is that ability to interpret things or to see that somebody might need to be pulled in more to the conversation or that kind of thing. Like, I think that is something that can be sometimes a superpower for women and also for people with just different learning styles to bring to bear. I think sometimes it's something that the women on the team bring to bear. Sometimes it's something that the introverts on the team bring to bear. Like, they can sometimes be more observant about the people on the team to make sure that the voices are getting heard.
As you've grown, your perspective changes. Are there any moments that jump out to you where the penny dropped, so to speak, where you realized, oh, that is so critical and it influenced the way that you engage others, the way you grew?
It takes stamina, really, Jonathan. I started most of my career in California, and then halfway through, I got married and moved to the Southeast. So I went from Northern California to Charleston, South Carolina, in very different pieces of the country and in different pieces of the HPE business. Going from California to South Carolina, California was a much more get in, get out discussion. And I had the government at the time. And so it was, what can you do for us? What is your price? Now get out the door. We're moving to Charleston. And I remember going into my first meeting. I walked in and I said, my name is that really quickly. And about 5 minutes later, the partner stopped me and said, I'm sorry, what was your name? And it really took me back of where I was and relationship and how business in one piece of the country is so different than business in another piece of the country. And it really stopped me in my tracks of, just because I thought this was the way to do business is not always the way it does business. And it really has taught me where I am in my role and with my people, of who you're talking to, who your customer is, and what they may need from you, not what you need from them. I love that I went from one side of the country to the other, and it has opened so many enlightening moments for me to understand the business to a different level that I would have never done staying in one piece.
Oh, I can't even imagine. I mean, the South is definitely a different beast than California, that's for
You're
sure.
not drinking bourbon or smoking cigars with your granddad, then you're not in the South. So, but it's all about relationship, and they buy from who they want to buy from. They buy from people they know. They want you to succeed because they're a part of their ecosystem. And it matters definitely in this part of the country than other parts.
I love that. I think I would say on that front, Jonathan, I've had a few moments in my career where I've really had things happen that have kind of shifted my way of thinking. Similar to Leslie, I made a big transition in my role. I didn't actually physically move, but I went from leading a region in Canada to doing a North American role and starting to get exposed to that different approach that sales takes in each of the different regions. And They're all unique in their ways. And I think the word that you picked off the hop, Leslie, was stamina. And I will choose adaptability to go with your stamina. And I think they're great partners because being adaptable, being really open minded, and really paying attention to how people think and what they need is really critical. Leslie, since you gave an example of working with customers, I'll give the example of leading teams. Over the course of my career, I've had a number of different roles. Some where I've led folks that were technical, some where they've been in sales leadership roles, all sorts of different roles and responsibilities over the years. And when I switched into the role that I'm currently in, I went from leading a sales team to leading a specialty sales overlay organization, which includes technical pre sales. And I had this culture shock a little bit because I had forgotten what it was like to lead a technical team, to understand that they want to be impactful in every interaction that they have with a customer and with each other, but they're coming at it from the level of a depth of expertise generally rather than a breadth of expertise. And that changes the approach in every conversation and how you structure the teams and how we have conversations with each other. And so that ability to be adaptable to those situations, to recognize different communication style types in the mix as well. Because as soon as you go from leading a sales team, very high number of extroverts in the sales world and more of a blend in the technical world. I definitely have some very extroverted folks on my team, but I have some introverts as well. And making sure that they all feel like they can contribute to solving a problem and get engaged, that any work that we're doing together and any career development that they want to do, they're getting the right support and coaching for them to be their best selves and to be able to thrive in the role as well, is something that I think over the last 3 years has been kind of defining for me.
And to learn from them, right? Totally two different segments, and to let them run and be okay with maybe not being super comfortable with it, but understand that they have the knowledge.
It's an incredibly enriching thing. And I will say, just on that, when you work with salespeople, the excitement is all about helping them win. And it's the same thing with technical folks, but the win looks a little bit different. The win is about creatively solving a technical problem rather than a business problem. Being able to link those two things together is also really helpful to have kind of both backgrounds.
It's understanding the right way to interact with peers, introverts, extroverts, the language that they understand, whether that's sales, technical acumen. That's challenging. That's a lot. Developers would call that code switching. You're code switching between different languages of communication, expectations. As you went through all this and as you learned this, I'm curious, did you have direct mentors or others alongside you that were peers that mentored you as you learned to pick up these skills that were impactful for you?
Yes, I've had many mentors over the years, and there's a few that stick out in my mind. All happen to be wonderful men, but really strong advocates of women in the business and wanting women to succeed, even 27 years ago, right? This is not that it's new, but it's not old either, of women in technology. It's still predominantly men. To have advocates that could see my hustle and what I call healthy aggressiveness, and to be able to use it in a way that could change business or change how we view things, was extraordinary. And mentors on the West Coast, mentors on the East Coast. Now I have a woman mentor that's part of our organization that leads our hybrid cloud, and she's amazing. And the collaboration that happens with that. But there's a few people that are no longer working with the company, but we're still text buddies. And I'm thankful for every one of them along the way that probably saw more in me than I saw in me, and putting me in positions that I was like, you've got to be kidding me. You're crazy to think that I want to do that or I can do it. And that is where the greatness comes. They saw it and pushed me into a way that really created who I am today, and the confidence and the capability that I can make change in a real way.
Yeah, I love that. I have also been really lucky to have some great mentors over the course of my career. I've also had the opportunity to work with a couple of great coaches. And that was an opportunity that was provided to me through my leadership teams, where they've identified that I'm somebody that would welcome that challenge of going through coaching and being willing to look at yourself, look at areas that you could be developing. And it's a really wonderful experience. I think one of the things that's really important about it, though, is you have to be willing to be a bit vulnerable about it and kind of self identify the areas that you want to work on. And I do think that's something that we could use more of as a business, like having more opportunities for people to get access to coaching, to opt into it would be great. But, it has been something that really has helped me just gain more perspective and challenge myself in new ways.
I think I've definitely benefited significantly from just relationships with peers, even direct reports, being able to have honest conversations about where they're at, about where I'm at. Emily, I got to say thank you to you for being one of those trusted
Likewise,
mentors for
likewise.
me.
But I think that those are the best and most impactful mentoring relationships. And certainly at this stage, when people ask me if I'm open to doing some mentoring with them, the first question is, are they comfortable with that being a bi-directional mentoring relationship? Because especially now with everything that's changing with technology, that learning is constant. And the reality of it is people that are earlier in careers have a sometimes a better handle on something that is more new in the technology space than I would have. So there's no point at which we are ever going to be done learning, and definitely not going to be done learning from each other.
Isn't it funny that early on in your life, well, I actually thought was a know-it-all. I already knew everything. And now I'm at a place 27 years later that I feel like I know nothing. That young mental, I know everything mentality. As you come in with other people and you see what you learn from them and you're like, this is amazing. And why would I ever have wanted to close it down or think that I, knew more than others, and that sharing of knowledge. And Emily, you and I, hit it off immediately in meeting. And you do that sometimes with people, of that being able to share on an honest basis of where we are, who we are. And you come into those people not often, but when you do, there's a clickness that creates that ability to share openly with each other.
Maturity, in some ways, is knowing that you don't know.
Right. That's right. My husband would tell you the same thing too, that I still probably need to work on that at home, but we'll take work
I love it.
first.
Knowing that you don't know, and also the confidence to be able to say it, that sense
Yeah.
of self assuredness that you build over time, that you don't feel like you need to walk in the room and know the answer. Your value in those conversations is often being able to identify that something is unclear, or that we might need to spend some more time researching it, or that there's something more to be learnt or explored in the conversation rather than just walking in and feeling like you've got all the answers.
And that goes back to reading the room. Maybe you do know, but in the context of the conversation, you're not supposed to let people know that you know. And it's important to pause and listen. What was the way you said it, Leslie, right? When to have that healthy aggressiveness or to not.
And how to control that healthy aggressiveness, because the healthy aggressiveness can also get you in trouble sometimes, of how to use it to your benefit, of really an acceleration of something good. And you kind of have to have a little bit of that, of curiosity, of wanting to do better or wanting a better result or changing. It's kind of a style that I see in myself, of being close with and friends and mentors. Emily, you have it. And when we're together at conferences, or you see it with women around you of who have that. And as you get older, it becomes more important to me of how unique that is in what we do. And the end result is that we all do better together.
It is. It's also a lot more fun. I mean, it's so
So
much
much
more
more
fun to
fun.
just mix it up and to not have to be perfect and on. Like, I can actually remember having this conversation with somebody once about a situation that I was in with my boss at the time, where I kind of knew where we needed to get to. And we were in this meeting and it was kind of getting frustrating. And after the meeting, it was actually somebody from the partner community who said to me, this person that you're communicating with is a very linear thinker. They need to kind of go from step one, two, three, four. That's their learning process. You tend to be a step one, step six, step five, step two, step 10. It's just a style thing. And that's okay. But just remember that the other person needs to come on the journey with you. It was just one of those really valuable lessons of understanding you have to meet the person that you're communicating with where they're at too. That's part of it. And of course, you want them to join you on your journey, but there's only so much that we can do if you're not willing to recognize where they're at and try and come to a place that you guys can mix it up and have some fun in that interaction and you're not leaving each other behind in the conversation.
I'm curious, how do you think about the difference between mentorship versus sponsorship versus advocacy?
I think they all have a place together. But I think that if you look at mentorship, it's a true sharing of how you're growing, right? Mentoring you or each other on what could be next, sharing stories, really helping you advance in your personal life or career or whatever it may be. Advocacy could be somebody just rooting for you. I'm an advocate of that. But are they really helping you lay out the guidelines or lay out the runway of where you could be? So I think there's a difference between, I think they blend, but I think there's definitely steps that go beyond that.
It's important if you're asking somebody to be a mentor to be clear about what you're really asking for. If somebody is offering to be a mentor or agreeing to be your mentor, they are agreeing to be engaged in an ongoing relationship with you. And really, it's a pretty close thing where you're having really frank conversations about what's working, what's not, where you want help, where you need help. If you're just looking for a sponsor, that is a different thing. And I think the sponsorship thing is sometimes less of an ask than a mentoring thing. And being aware that's even an option in reaching out for people that you could potentially work with that can help you develop your career is understanding that's also a great thing to ask somebody to help you out with, to say, hey, I know, you're a really busy person and you may not have time to take on a full mentoring relationship, but I'd love it if you wouldn't mind spending a little bit of time with me so I can talk to you about what my goals are. And maybe that's something that you can provide some sponsorship on as I'm looking for new roles or looking to move forward in the company. Just understanding that there's a difference there is a helpful thing. On the advocacy front, I do think advocacy is something that all of us engage in a very informal way sometimes. Actually, earlier on in the conversation, you asked a question about coaching, and I had said, I think it would be great if, as we were all able to get access to more coaching more easily. That would be kind of like an advocacy sort of generally that's a great thing, but it's less engaged or less sort of concrete in terms of what it means to the person that you're doing it for, the group of people that you're doing it for. So again, just super helpful tools for people that are looking for some support in the organization to say it's also okay to ask for somebody to be a sponsor without getting into a full-blown mentorship relationship.
That's super helpful. When it comes to professional development and growing, there is some level of needing to self advocate. That's not been something easy for me to do. I'm curious, is there any time when you've had to advocate for yourself in a significant way?
Well, I'll start off by saying being able to advocate for yourself, I don't think it's easy for most people to do. I find it very difficult. I do have a couple of hacks for it. It is easier to ask somebody for advice. Let's use the example of you're looking for an increase in your compensation. And sometimes it's really hard to have that conversation. So to open it up with, hey, I'm working really hard and I want to add more value to the organization. And I'd like to understand what that would look like. What would more value for me look like? Where do you think I'm at in that stream? And this is where I'm sitting right now. I sort of believe that this is where my value sits from a compensation standpoint. What are the gaps? Can you help me unpack that a little bit and understand it? So framing it as a collaboration, a question, it sometimes makes it a little less intimidating to walk into those conversations. It is super important to be prepared to have those conversations. We have to do that for ourselves. But I acknowledge it's not an easy thing to do. So finding something that aligns to your style can sometimes be a hack to help you get into the conversation. My style is to ask questions. I'm super curious about things I want to understand. And so I found that's kind of a helpful way for me to go in and advocate for myself when those moments happen.
Yes. And then using your mentor or friend or sponsor or advocate to bounce it off of beforehand, get feedback of what that sounds like. And am I on the right track? I do that with peers of mine in the company that know the players, right? And who you are going to. And when you're advocating for yourself and when you ask their honest opinion, they may have a different view of or a thought, and it could be completely different. And so it may change how you present that to whoever it is you may be talking to. But my peers in the organization, somebody you work with that understands the business and what you're going after or what you're trying to get or what you're trying to do, sometimes can be a great player on what other people may view you coming to the table with.
Yeah, having somebody else to bounce ideas off of, to reflect back to you, to role play, right?
This is what you sound like. Is this what you're trying to come across? Or what are you trying to get out? Because it's not coming across that clear. And it's a big help.
For me, right, I'm roaming around the city, dropping kids off. I'm constantly processing ideas, thoughts, language, and considering how that's going to land. Do you have any tricks of how you consider the language that you use and the context that you use it?
Yeah, I mean, I think over the years, I'm a definitely a go getter, get it done person. GSD. I don't think we're allowed to cuss, so I'm going to not cuss. I'll just say GSD person. And I think that for a long time, reactionary and instead of visionary, and to sit those thoughts before actioning has definitely pulled me back of walking into maybe the wrong road or a mistake or coming across in a wrong way. But I sit on things a lot too, Jonathan, and sometimes too long now, where I write it down, I think about it, I come back to it, and then I make sure that I was on the right track or change it in a way of what it needs to be, but not so reactionary instantly. Think about it, interpret it in a way that maybe from others, how others may view it, not just from me, and then react to it. So I think that I've learned over the years to not be so reactionary, but then also there's a time period of not holding back for so long, right? Make a decision and move on. And typically, your initial reaction for me is right. It's just the way of putting it out there and how it could be perceived of making it the right business decision.
Yeah, I think those are important points. Language and approach is one of those things that I think is incredibly personal. So, giving yourself that time to reflect is really important so that you say what you really mean to say rather than just that initial gut reaction. It's super helpful, but you also have to be really authentic in what you say and using your own language. I think one of the things that happens, we all start to use the same words and becomes kind of trendy to say certain things or put things in a certain frame of reference. I think the more authentic you are, the more memorable conversations are as well. So sometimes putting it in a way that's personal to you is, I think, more impactful.
Seems like we're in an industry and in organizations that are in a constant state of change, and that can make maintaining a cohesiveness in a team difficult. It's critical to have, an underlying through line for yourself in terms of what you're committed to and what matters most to you. I'm curious, what are some of the things that you've taken from team to team that have been the pillars in those rough seas, so to speak? The things that you hold on to when you're not sure where things are going?
And I think for me, it's just be you. And that can be saying that to myself or to my team that the change is going to happen around us, whether we want it, like it, or love it. But I think my team would tell you that I'm pretty direct and pretty open. Authentic, Emily, you said is key, that the roles can change, the company can change, the solutions can change, our customers can change. But how you navigate that and who you are as a person is going to get you to where you want to be. And the other stuff we can learn, it's going to change again. Just be who you are, true to yourself and your nature, and the answers are going to come in the right way.
I love that. I would say the pillar, and I share a lot of those things. I think the other pillar that I always lean on is being a productive and constructive part of the solution or the next step. So understand that a lot in a situation where there's change afoot is outside of your area of control. Identify something that you can do in that moment to be helpful that is within your control. I can't control that the company wants to make a decision or go in a different direction. I can't control that the customer is choosing another supplier. I can't control that the technology direction isn't going in the way that I believed it should. What I can do in this moment is help support them in that decision and be sort of a positive force in that change and not try and control something that's not controllable. So that in those moments, be able to identify it. So there's that piece of it from myself. And I think for my team as well, be able to normalize that the change is difficult and help them identify where are some areas that they could be impactful and a positive force in this new direction that sort of emerged that we weren't necessarily expecting.
It's great. Love that.
I'm curious if you could leave our listeners with one thought on how to better grow in their own roles. What would you leave them with?
I will say get out there and try things and try not to worry about making mistakes because you will definitely make mistakes. It's the one thing that I can guarantee. What I can promise is that every mistake will give you the opportunity to learn something that you would not have learned if you didn't make that mistake. So, yeah, I think that would be the one thing that I would throw out there. Get out there, try some things, make some mistakes.
If you're not crashing and burning, you're not learning.
Exactly. I totally agree with that. That's probably would be my number one. And I tell my team all the time that new members come onto the team and they say, who's doing it right? Tell me best practices of who is running their business in the right way. I'm leery of saying to go talk to this person because there is no right way. I want you to do it your way. And sometimes we get into the habit of everybody doing the same thing, especially in the role that I'm in and how we handle partners. But I want to know what you bring to the table, right? What do you think is the right way? Because you may be thinking a bit differently that the other team members may not. And so it may not be right and you may fail, but I don't want to put you in a box of this is how I think the role is. I want you to bring what you think to the role. So fail fast, fail big, learn, and then move on to the next.
Oh, I love that. I definitely keep reminding myself that every miss is an opportunity to learn. Emily, Leslie, thank you so much for taking the time today. It's been an absolute pleasure to spend this time with you. A big thank you to Emily and Leslie for sharing their perspective and their time. What their experience really reinforced for me is that meaningful growth comes from doing and learning in the trenches. These women didn't advance simply by working harder, although that was a critical piece of the puzzle. They learned how to slow down, develop a keen awareness of people, and lead with a kind of empathy that comes from reading the room and understanding others. It's the intentionality within your communication that turns colleagues into advocates and fosters better outcomes for individuals and teams that we're all a part of. Thanks for listening to Edge of IT. If you found this conversation valuable, be sure to subscribe and follow the show on Apple Podcasts or Spotify so you don't miss future episodes.